Welcome to Ideas, a time of conversation about all things board games. Community is built on conversations, and games are built on ideas.
Hey, my name is Brent here on Cloudy with a Chance of Meeples, and welcome to a brand new year and a brand new episode of Ideas. We got some fresh new ideas, and every month that we here on Cloudy with a Chance of Meeples bring in a designer or someone in the board gaming hobby and just chat about board game design work and how it all works and how ideas go from here onto the table on into the form of games that we can play. And so, I feel that community is built on conversation, just like games are built on ideas. And today we have a special guest of the game Shifting Stones, which I will say is a Mensa Select winner, which is pretty sweet. We have Evan Raitt. How's it going, Evan?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am doing good. It's we're dealing with a lot of snow in my neck of the woods, and I've been shoveling a lot as of late. So besides that,
we got our own dusting recently ourselves up here.
And yeah, I'm in Central Plains of Canada. Where are you located?
I'm actually in New Hampshire, over in New England.
Okay, so you get all that like cold, wet snow off the East Coast?
Lots of wind and lots of very cold snow. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we deal with like minus 40, which is just ridiculous. So, but moving on from the weather, we're talking about board games and we're talking about Shifting Stones. But before we get into your design, Shifting Stones, what got you into this wonderful hobby that we share?
So it's actually due to a very particular game.
Okay.
I've always enjoyed playing like Hearts or Hi-Ho Cheerios with my parents, like after dinner, as a kid. But when one of my first big purchases I was able to do on my own was a board game, a very infamous board game called the Pokemon Master Trainer board game.
Okay.
It's based off of Pokemon, and it's not great. It's kind of infamous in a lot of Pokemon communities and whatnot, but I liked it, but I didn't care for how some of it worked. So I edited it. I edited a couple of things, kept editing it. Eventually, I grabbed a big thing, a poster board, created 1-inch grids, made my own game that was based on Pokemon, as it were. But it became so big, it took up my parents' entire living room. It was massive, and my friends and I, we would play it quite often. And that's how I got started. That was like middle school-ish.
Okay.
And then when I got into college, actually, I was taking industrial design at Rochester Institute of Technology, and we had access to a whole bunch of just building materials. And one of the things I said, hey, I had this idea for like this chess-like game, kind of chess-like, maybe checkers-like. And I had the ability to like saw off a couple of dowel rods, make a couple of things, made a board game. One of my professors was like, that's pretty cool. And I said, yeah, we played it. It was terrible, but we had fun with it. And then I'm like, this was kind of cool. The professor actually said, hey, do you want to take this as like an open elective? You could do board game design as an open elective. I said, sure. I created a game that was a board game. I said, I really like this. And then from there, it really turned into this is my side hobby. And I was just kind of doing it for me and for my friends. And then eventually, it was only a couple of years, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that I started to say, I'm going to take this hobby and let's actually make something now of it. And so that's how eventually the story of Shifting Stones came about.
Okay. So do you have a regular game group that you get together with on a consistent basis?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually the current like big game group I work with and talk with, we're all on Discord. We have a Discord group. When the pandemic hit, a lot of game groups that you might imagine, there is a board game cafe. I'm very fortunate that there's a board game cafe here in Manchester, and we couldn't meet there anymore. And I ended up finding a couple of people on Discord. We got together, and all of a sudden we have like 12 people every night when we meet. We're going through all of our games, talking about our games. And honestly, some of the best nights that we have is when we just talk shop. We just talk about the game design of one person's particular game. It's always very fun.
Very cool. So you talk about the game design of like a published game, or kind of you guys are all working on different things and just fiddling around with your own designs?
It's usually our own designs. And we're very different individuals. We have someone who's very, very deeply entrenched in social deduction games. We have someone who loves like roll and writes or something and write games,
right? And
has found a lot of success in those, actually. We have some individuals who just like to throw stuff against a wall and just find out what sticks. And we have a lot of fun times just kind of saying, I like this because of this, and I didn't like this because of this. And we eventually kind of, in some ways collaboratively talk about, what we're working on. So that has been the most transformative thing for me in the past like two years, is this Discord group of very like-minded people who want to just create cool games.
That's really cool. Yeah, obviously the pandemic changed a lot of things for a lot of different people, and I love the creativity that I've seen over the last couple of years, specifically in 2020, of people just, okay, that's not working. I can't do this. I can't do that. What can I do to still do that, but like, on a virtual platform, or just different things that we've seen the creativity of people come out, which I find really fascinating. It's been really, really cool. So what are you currently playing these days?
I'm playing, so actually in terms of, for me, I'm actually playing a lot more video games that are like board games.
Okay.
The biggest one being like Duff Romantic. That one's which coincidentally is going to become a board game, which I find very funny. But in terms of, for me, a lot of the games I tend to like to play are kind of classics for me. Like my favorite game of all is Kingsburg.
Okay.
I play it. Whenever I have a chance to play it, I will play it. I also really love things like Acquire. I like Machikoro. I like, there's actually a small little game. I think I have it on my shelf. It's called a Fairy Tale. It's a very simple game. And I like all sorts of very different types of games, but the best games for me are definitely those things that are like super simple. You can kind of get them out for a couple of turns, have some fun around talking with people. So any type of game that anyone also brings me, I'm like, let's play. And that's usually also like the best answer to that. I'm kind of playing what anyone else wants to play.
So you say Fairy Tile? Is that Fairy Tile like the yellow game?
No, I think it's Fairy Tale. Okay. Yeah, it's a very small little box game. Okay. I'll see if I can dig it up.
Well, that's all right. I haven't heard of that one, but I know Yellow has a game called Fairy Tile that's kind of medieval. I think it's got like a princess and a knight and a dragon. They all move in a different way across this. I don't know exactly how it works, but yeah, very cool. I've been enjoying recently Flamecraft up there, and Milo Everdell. We've been playing a lot with my kids. I'm kind of all over the board, kind of similar-ish to you in the sense of like, I like shorter games. Like my sweet spot is 30 to 60 minutes. After that, there are certain games like full-blown Everdell will last over an hour often.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I just love that quick turnaround and just get in, have fun, and then get out. It doesn't overstay or stay its welcome. So let's talk about Shifting Stones, because it's a smaller game, but it's got some fun, interesting decisions. I will say this: we got this in May, and my son specifically, like gobbled the game up. Like, actually, to be honest, both my kids gobbled the game up. I have in 2022 like over 130 plays of the game, and my kids would play it on their own. So like it's just been a great game for us. And I just love seeing, my 6-year-old just being able to hold her own and win and
Mhm.
have that nice, I guess you'd say hand management, where you want to score those cards, but you need to use those cards to, manipulate the grid. So let's go back. When did you start designing Shifting Stones?
So the design of Shifting Stones really started probably in like that early phase of me making games. Actually, it's a really old design if you really take it back. It started off as a trading card game because at the time I felt like I could make a trading card game. And it actually started as, instead of having a mechanic like in Magic, you have land, or in Pokemon, you have energies. I had this idea of, you have these tiles in front of you and you have to manipulate those tiles, and that would be what allows you to pay for the cost of the card.
Mhm.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Mhm.
But then the game just kind of went nowhere because it's so difficult to make a trading card game, let alone get one published these days.
Yeah.
So it kind of sat in my idea book for quite a while, and periodically I'll just go through my idea folder, which is getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day. And at the time, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that Glyph card game I made. It was kind of cool. And it had this cool action, but it went nowhere. Maybe I could see if I can think about something. And so I just thought about it. And like, what if I just get rid of the other half of the game? What if this is just the game? And I said, okay, wait, now I might be onto something. Put stuff together, changed a whole bunch of things. There used to be a version where each of those cards, those 9 stone tiles, were actually cut into 4. There were all sorts of very different, like really kind of complicated, very even more thinky puzzles that I was putting with this. And the more and more that I played it, the more I'm like, okay, now I'm pulling this mechanic out. Now I'm pulling that mechanic out. And it really got to the point where it was so basic, I got nervous that I made it too basic. And that's about the time where it kind of stuck where it was. And it kind of got to where it was. And I'm maybe a few tweaks here or there. I think one of the big final tweaks is I went down from 5 cards to 4 in your hand.
Okay.
And that's when it really began to resonate with a lot of people. And I'm like, okay, I think I have something here. But the biggest thing for me was, it's 9 things on a table and a deck of cards. Like, how is this ever going to be on someone's bookshelf as like sitting next to Kingsburg, like one of my favorite games of all time? And it's like this big board that has all these pieces and parts. I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to have this. The story is that one day I decided, you know what, if I want to do game design, if I want to do publishing, if I want a game published, I got to just bring it out to people. And I went to PAX East one year. I think it was like either 2019 or so, and took it to a couple of people. Got a connection with Game Raitt. Game Raitt took a look at it. A month later, they said, "Hey, we want to publish your game," and like that was the best night of my life to be like, it actually happened, and it's been incredible. I mean, the story that you're telling me about, your kids enjoying this game, I hear that so often, and every single time it makes me smile, because I think about the games that I played when I was a kid. Like, as I said, Hi Ho Cherry-O. Like, you can't get a group of seasoned veteran players to get around a table and play Hi Ho Cherry-O, but it's one of those games that it really means a lot to me in the greater scope of getting interested in games. And so having a game that not only is published, but really like is getting a lot of people who probably don't really play a lot of games or want to get into games. I mean, I had a call with my aunt, and she's on the phone. She's having a wine party with all of her friends, and they're playing Shifting Stones, and they're having the time of their lives. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. And yeah, so for me, that's kind of the story of Shifting Stones and how it came to be.
That's awesome. And I guess stories like mine and your aunt, that's what kind of just keeps you going, because you must get to a point, like you said, it was, it was tucked away in some folder for so long because it just wasn't working. And it's like you're hitting that wall and hitting that wall. And then all of a sudden one day something just clicks.
Yeah.
And it just turns out to be a published board game. I think that would be probably everybody in the board gaming hobbies like dream would be to have their ideas start here and end up in these boxes, and they can share that with people and create those long-lasting memories. Because that one thing I love about Shifting Stones is because it is so accessible, and it is a small box. I've played this game at like restaurants on road trips. I've played it in like our hotel room on those tiny tables. Like, this is a pretty compact game that we've played all over the place. And I love hearing your heart behind it and just seeing your excitement and all this coming to fruition. So what would you say was your biggest challenge in designing it? Like, whittling that deck down? Like, you only have 5 5-point cards. At what point did you, or what did like the deck look like before Game Right had it, or what changed before Game Right had it?
Well, one of the big things, and I will say this, Game Right did an incredible job with the game, and their vision for what Shifting Stones is, I absolutely love and adore. One of the biggest changes that kind of went through is a lot of the starting ideas as to what Shifting Stones was and what I was kind of building towards was actually its theming. It started off actually based off of Mayan language and Mayan glyphs that are all squares. And if you look at Mayan glyphs, they're kind of like parts of a square. And that's kind of how it started. And that was kind of the original theming. That was the hardest to kind of, let go of, but they did a fantastic job. The artists did an incredible job. And these have actually, and those pieces have actually like started to resonate with a lot of people, and probably would have resonated more with more people in this version. One of the things that also changed but to Game Right is one of my ideas was actually each of the individual cards had another like symbol on them. And you could actually, it was also like it had a little set collection. So not only are you scoring individuals, you're also scoring things that kind of got removed like late in the game as well. And then before I gave it to Game Right, I did also have more higher point cards in one of the earlier versions. It kind of really was more of, ones were a lot more rare. And it actually turned out to be like, okay, there's a whole lot more 2s and 3s. I think I had a couple of 5s. I even had like a few 9s, I think. It's like 7s or 9s.
Wow.
And that was something that actually took a while for me to kind of chip through and be like, that's too much, get rid of that. Let's bring it down lower, because the biggest thing was then having all those individuals counting up your points. Took a little bit longer. Some people had to bust out their phones for a calculator sometimes.
Right.
And that was one of the things I'm like, okay, let's tone down the points. So there, and I mean, as I said, there are some of the early game design ideas that really stumped me were this getting away from this idea that the game had to be this kind of complicated masterpiece of thinking. That was like a really big, once I kind of felt okay with there being 9 tiles on a table, that actually was a huge hurdle for me. Someone who looks at some of these games are like these, big challenging things. And I'm looking at a table and there's 9 squares sitting on the table. I'm like, no, this can't work. Getting over like this idea of, okay, let's get rid of this kind of grid on those things. Let's make it even more simple. That was probably the actual biggest hurdle from going from this kind of idea sitting in the folder to actually becoming the game that I felt actually comfortable bringing in front of a publisher.
And I think that's something that maybe I'm speaking a generalized thought here, but I feel like the board gaming hobby right now is like bigger is better. And the bigger the game is, the better the game is. And the more miniatures you have, the better the game is. You know what I mean? And that's not necessarily always true. Like there's some fantastic games in smaller boxes. You know, I'm thinking even like Gizmos it's got a little cool marble dispenser. I don't know if you played Gizmos or not. It's not a very grandiose game. I'm just picking one that I see behind me. But like it's not a grandiose game, but it's just streamlined. And I feel sometimes, like, do you feel it was a trap when you sat there and like, my game's not good enough because it isn't big?
And this has been like so this is something I've actually learned a lot being in this group, this Discord group where we have these calls. The biggest thing I've learned through that group is, what are your goals for the game? And that really defines whether or not your game really should be in that medium weight, medium heavy, weight, or that medium light, or light.
Right.
And based off of, if I was to kind of go back to my past self and tell myself, I would have said, think about your goals for what your game is. You wanted at that time to design a game that was simple, that you could just fit in your pocket, that you could bring out to anybody. And really, I'm going to be stealing a quote from a very influential person for me. It's the bonfire that everyone's gathering around to just have a good time with each other. That's what I was trying to design. So why am I trying to make this super complex, brain thinky for like 10 minutes to make the perfect move? Just have a fun game. Let them, let some other simple mechanics speak for themselves. Let that happen. So there is definitely a lot of like, I do prefer more light, medium games than I do the heavy level kind of games. And I do see there, at times bigger is better, more, that I've now made a game and that, miniature is 4 inches tall. Okay, well now this game is now 6 inches tall. But I do think that, and I do think there are a lot of places for a lot of those games, and I know that some people do enjoy those. For me, I want to create a game that's very just its mechanics. It's very stripped down. It especially like if you're ever playing like you're playing like an indie game of indie video game, and it's very much just what that game is. It's not going for the elaborate storytelling as like a AAA big blockbuster video game is.
That's awesome. So moving forward, as we get close to wrapping up, do you have any other designs on the go or that you're currently pitching to publishers?
So I currently have 2 things in the works. One of them is a board game that I'm currently very close to having set and ready to start pitching. My hope is to actually have that ready for the next PAX East that I can, go back to. But I actually have a more immediate project actually happening, which coincidentally is a trading card game. We're in the final stages of production of a trading card game called Grotto Beasts that I had designed. It is for lack of a better word, it's merchandise that is for a popular Twitch streamer, Germa985.
Okay.
Rather than creating just general merchandise that any streamer would, he wanted to create a trading card game. And over the past year, I've been working on this. It's really fun, really interesting. We haven't revealed too much about it, but there is a lot of detail online that you could find that we've been revealing artworks, many of which have been built by artists within Germa's community, which has been really cool.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's been a blast, absolute blast to work on that project. So that's and that's getting very close to being able to being released.
Very cool. So if someone wants to know more about this or more about your art, or sorry, not your art, your game design, do you have like social media where they can, follow you or anything like that?
Yeah, so I do have a Twitter at ER Game Design. That's where I'll probably post a lot of things about the upcoming Grotto Beasts, as well as any other particular thoughts or upcoming things that I might be going for and doing.
Sweet. I'll put a link to that, to your Twitter page in the description of this video. And that sounds cool. I'm so excited for you moving forward with your first published game, One Mensa, and just excited to see what you have coming down the line in the months and years to come. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk about your ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been very fun. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. And of course, if you want to know more about Cloudy with a Chance of Meeples, we're on Facebook, Cloudy with a Chance of Meeples. Remember, community is built on conversation, just like games are built on ideas. Till next time, grab your umbrella. The forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember to grab your umbrella because the forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.